This is the 9th in a series of videos on the subject of Configuration Management, or CM, designed to provide a grounding in the subject and to allow those of you who are either about to start doing development or have recently started to understand what it's all about and how important it can be to projects. In our last video, we looked at common questions on the version management system. In any documentation on processes, there is usually one or more appendices, so today we're going to have a look at the important subject of disaster management. The term disaster management or disaster planning sounds like you're aiming to create a more productive and complete disaster, but in reality it's quite the opposite. You're trying to solve or to avoid a very serious problem that has put your team or entire organisation in dire jeopardy. This isn't the loss or failure of a single PC or server, as version management, backups, and normal day-to-day plans cover how to recover from these. This is more than a minor inconvenience. This is something that could end your organisation or perhaps your career. It's often true that in life, projects, and computing, you learn more from failures than successes. So what we'll relate today is a true story from some years ago, where a great deal was learned in a very short period of time, and how we planned our way out of the problem. On arriving for the day's work, we discovered that there had been a RAID failure on the Storage Area Network, or SAN. A Storage Area Network is a computer network which provides access to consolidated, block-level data storage. SANs are primarily used to access data storage devices, such as disk arrays from servers, so that the devices appear to the operating system as direct attached storage. This allows virtual servers to have organised storage, and we did have a lot of virtual servers. The RAID rebuild was already underway, so everyone got on with other things while we waited for it to be restored. So far, this was still in our comfort zone, as there were processes in place which should have restored normality. The restore was expected to take some time, but while this was an inconvenience, it wasn't seen as a major issue. Sometime later, I had a meeting with the support manager to discover that the RAID rebuild had failed, and we'd lost access to even more of the SAN. Effectively, we had lost access to a quarter of the entire SAN, including two key systems, the version management system and the issue management system, plus a few less important systems. The manufacturer of the kit was contacted, who, after telling us we couldn't have the error that we had encountered, finally admitted that we actually did. As the support manager said, that even with long odds, someone won the lottery every week. By the end of day one, the outlook was looking sketchy, but we had access to international support teams who were now diagnosing the problem. By day two, we were looking at restoring backups once the SAN was operational again. By day three, it was obvious that there was an issue with our recent backups. They were unusable. The version management system we used was still inaccessible. However, all the configuration management software was also kept in a Git repository, and as that was distributed, we still had access to it. Once the SAN was back up again, we brought in a disk recovery specialist to attempt to restore the missing parts of the issue management system. This, of course, was expensive, and the accountants did complain about the cost, but as we explained, that either we got it done or there wouldn't be a job for accountants, or us, going forward. The backup issue was still a problem, as the recent backups were not restorable. But we did have a good backup from a few months ago. As you can expect, all this activity did cause some consternation within the organisation. Questions of how did this happen? Valid questions to be sure, but not helpful while we were trying to solve the problem. The old adage that springs to mind is, when you're up to your armpits in alligators, it's hard to remember that your original intention was to drain the swamp. Fix the problem first, then investigate how you got here, to avoid being here again. So after the first week, we had our issue management system back, but not the version management system, containing all of our source code. We still had the build repository containing all the builds that had been tested and released, including snapshots of the sources used for each build. And we had the source and binaries for the build system itself. There followed a number of meetings with the support manager, where I proposed a rebuild of the version management system from the last good backup onwards. In our build repository, we had copies of the source code for each release, plus the binaries, referenced in a manifest for each product and release. So we checked in each release in turn into the version management system, starting from the oldest to the most recent, to rebuild the version history in the version management system. While this didn't have every revision ever made on the files, it did have the key revisions that were used to build releases. At the end of this exercise, we had the version management system back to where it was prior to the incident. Developers could then check in anything they were working on from that point onwards. At this time, we discovered that some of the user documentation had never been added to the version management system, nor had it been part of the product builds. Going forward, we recommended that documentation should be considered a deliverable and placed under source code control. There were, of course, more than a few lessons learned meetings that followed to determine what went wrong with our system. The most important outcome was the formation of a business continuity team. A business continuity team ensures an organisation stays operational during crisis by developing, testing and executing plans to manage disruptions, safeguarding people, assets and critical functions, which involves risk assessment, disaster recovery planning, crisis communication and technology recovery, keeping essential services running and protecting the organisation's reputation. Such a team needs to do a lot more than pay lip service to the concept, and has a series of key responsibilities. Risk management and analysis, identifying potential threats, for example, natural disasters, cyber attacks, system failures, and assessing their impact through business impact analysis. Plan development, creating comprehensive business continuity plans and disaster recovery plans for IT, outlining strategies for people, processes, facilities, and technology. Strategic implementation, setting up solutions like backup systems, alternate work sites, and communication protocols. Testing and training, regular testing plans through drills and exercises to ensure they work, and training staff on their roles during an emergency. Incident response, leading the response during actual events, making decisions and coordinating recovery efforts. Crisis communication, managing communications with employees, customers, vendors and stakeholders during disruptions. Technology recovery, overseeing the restoration of IT systems and data. Basically, disaster recovery. While some of these subjects and meetings about them might seem dry and boring, having just been through and recovered from a disaster focused our minds wonderfully. Once we had created a series of plans and processes to cope with a wide series of situations that were likely, or very unlikely, to occur, the plans were saved as PDFs and stored on encrypted pen drives that the members of the continuity team were required to carry with them at all times. storing the plans only on a server didn't seem like a good idea. So what should you take away from all of this? If you work in an organisation, big or small, that depends on technology to operate. What would you do if some system stopped working, or the company running it collapsed? Do you have a plan to keep working, or to recover following a major incident? And if you do have a plan, when did you last test it? That's it for today. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching today's video. Please feel free to click on the link in the description below to discover more videos.